Hey everyone, welcome to AMC Movie Talk for movie fans. I'm your host, Ashley Mova, and this is the daily show where we give you all of the latest news from the world of movies, plus a little bit of insight into what it all means. Joining us, as always, is AMC Movie News Editor-in-Chief, John Campea.
Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the show, coming to you live from the Stream.TV studios right here in Hollywood, California. And I got to tell you, last night, just as a quick thought, I went to actually the world premiere, the red carpet premiere of Alexander. I didn't even know how the name. Stupid title. Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. That's an awful title. And I only went because Disney always throws great after parties after their premieres. I got to tell you, me and Ann both grinned ear to ear the whole film. I thought it was cute and charming, and I thought it looked like a piece of trash throwaway, like a little family film. But I got to tell you, I enjoyed myself. So check it out if you get a chance.
Also here, AMC Movie News Senior Editor, Amy Rose Eisenbach.
Hello, guys. Nice to be back.
And also here, AMC's Christian Harloff.
I have nothing clever to say.
Oh, hey, listen, guys, before we get started, as you know, every couple of weeks we like to do a show where, since we don't get to a lot of Twitter questions during the show, every couple of weeks we just do a whole show where it's just your Twitter questions. And I put it on my social media network a little bit earlier this morning that today is one of those days. We are just taking your questions for those of you who are watching us live. Now, we do this show live every day, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's LA time. So if you're watching us right now and you got some questions you want answered, this is your day. So tweet on in to @AMC Movie News. Ashley's going to be over there. She's going to be picking out questions today. So, without any further ado, Ashley, let's start this train.
All right, first up, Goofbars writes, are you buying into the SpiderMan crossing over with Marvel rumors this time around? I'm not sure.
That didn't take long.
That's funny.
We were talking before. I was like, someone's going to ask you about this SpiderMan thing. Okay. All right. So, for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, there have been some developments lately. It is no big secret that Sony, not necessarily the studio per se, but Sony, the company as a whole, like the one that makes, still makes record players and makes Blu-ray players and makes snowmobiles and everything else in between. Sony as a company as a whole is in really bad trouble. They're in terrible trouble. And we've always said, at least I've always said, that Sony crossing over with Avengers at any time is an absolute 100% impossibility. The only asterisk I ever would have put on that is to say, unless the company goes under or the company sinks, something like that. Spider-Man's profitable. Even as much as everybody likes to make up this fiction that Spider-Man 2 was a bomb, it made them lots and lots and lots of money. But, you have to at least step back and say, hey, if the company is sinking as a whole, you have to, think that might open up a crack in the door somewhere. So there's a story going around that is like one of the headlines on every major movie news site, and it's driving me crazy that this is the case. But that's basically saying there are talks going on between Marvel and Sony right now because Marvel wants Spider-Man in the fold. And that's going on. And so all these news sites start running with these headlines and blah, blah, which drives me crazy. Because, once again, when you follow to where did this story come from, what is the genesis of this story that Marvel and Sony are right now talking to each other about getting Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is where it comes from. It comes from one site, from an unnamed source that says, I talked to a source who mentioned to me this. That's where this is coming from. It just happens to be the same source that guaranteed us and confirmed for us that Joseph Gordon-Levitt was going to be the new Batman. And we know how that turned out. But that's where this story is coming from. Now, that is not to say that this is an impossibility. It's not. The good ship Sony is in trouble. This opens up possibilities that we may have considered impossible otherwise. But if today was a regular AMC Movie Talk day and we're running news stories, I would not have this as a story. Because one site who claims that one guy talked to one unnamed source that maybe this is happening is not something that movie news sites should be running as their headlines. It's just not. It's deceptive to our readers until we know something more. But once again, let's not discount this as a possibility simply because Sony's in trouble. So you never know what could happen. I just don't think there's enough there to run with it as a story at this point. Anyway, Christian, you and I started to talk about this a little bit beforehand. What do you think?
The only reason I bring some validity to it is just because I remember all those rumors at one point where they were that there was talks between them when Spider-Man was gonna have the Stark Tower in the background, that there was something.
And the Oscorp building was going to be in Avengers.
Right. So there was all that. It just seems like that's been going on for a little bit, and those rumors keep popping up. It just didn't come out of nowhere. Like it seems like at some point there were talks between the studios somewhere. Now, this could very well fall through if it even did start. So, for example, look at all the stuff with Joaquin Phoenix and Doctor Strange. Mm-hmm. It was very close. It's close. He's almost there. He's almost there. And guess what? It doesn't happen. Because that's an actor and a role, not two major studios trying to make things work. So the possibility of it is, I can't see it happening because just the negotiations of you guys get this, we get this, then you're gonna. And Marvel is notorious. Like maybe you said because Sony's in trouble, they're going to be the ones going, well, you have to do what we say. Yeah, like whatever we want you to do, Sony, you can do it. You can get this much profit. They're going to be holding the chips. Would I love to see it? Sure. I think Spider-Man needs serious saving, and I think by putting him in Avengers could be great. I just don't know how much I'm buying into it yet.
Amy Rose?
Yeah, same boat. It's not news yet, it's speculation, and we see this all the time. Like, the ultimate crossover, this, or add this character to this mix, and like, it would make sense to throw Spider-Man in there, and fans would love it, and it would be fantastic, and I'd love to see what Marvel would do with the rights to that. But you're right, that asterisk is if Sony goes under. Well, not under, they have enough to float them, but they're not in enough of a solid place that they want to be. And so I do think it's a possibility, but it's not newsworthy yet until we hear it from a credible source, and we don't have that yet. But from a monetary standpoint, I mean, we always talk about rights going back to Marvel and this and that, and it would be a really good news break for both of these companies. So I do think it would make sense, but yeah, right now I wouldn't run with the story either.
Well, do you think now with Marvel, it's a question I'm curious what you guys think, because of obviously Guardians of the Galaxy, whatever they put out is just making mega hand over fist amount of money. Now, can they spend the money to go ahead and do this? Maybe because they have so much now. They're running at an all-time high to where if they got back Punisher, right? But
they did have to buy that.
I know. Where I'm going with that is as far as they want their stuff back. Even in these articles, as some was saying, like, they want all their characters and properties back. So maybe by pouncing on Sony when they're in trouble, like you said, does make a lot of sense, and maybe it is happening because they want to get all of their stuff back, and maybe eventually they're hoping for Fox to start to go under. It's like, let's get the X-Men back too. So.
Well, something to keep in mind about that, I mean, I think Disney, this is the argument I've always made about that, like whether or not Sony was in trouble, is that Disney clearly has the money. If they want to write a check for $2 billion tomorrow, they can. Right. They just have that kind of, but Disney is also notoriously frugal and very tight with their money, and they only spend money when it's a guaranteed thing, right?
They're smart.
My whole thing has always been about whether or not they buy Spider-Man back. My question has always been, why would they? I mean, you spend $2 billion, and let's say Spider-Man was in the Avengers. Do you know, 8 million people that would see a Spider-Man movie that did not go to see the Avengers? I don't. I personally don't know one human. Me personally, I'm sure a lot of people out there do. Me personally, I don't know one human being that would be interested in seeing a Spider-Man movie that didn't go to see Avengers. So Marvel could have spent $2 billion to get Spider-Man. What would it have gotten them back? Practically nothing.
But the franchise possibilities of pairing Spider-Man
so then
with other films.
Long term, right. So then that becomes a question about long term. And then how often do they do a Spider-Man movie? Every 4 years, every 5 years? I don't know. But let's keep this in mind, too. You brought up, I think, the absolute key part of all this. When you mentioned about, is Marvel going to start dictating to Sony? Remember, Marvel just parted ways with Edgar Wright because Marvel is in charge of anything they touch. Yeah. And is Sony, other than Sony's ship sinking, is Sony going to enter into a relationship with Marvel where now, guess what? Now, Sony, you're not even in charge of your own property. Right. We are going to tell you what Spider-Man is going to say and do in our movie, and then we're going to tell you what Spider-Man is going to say and do in your own movies as well, because we need it to fit in with our cinematic universe.
If they need this bad enough,
it depends, right?
Well, but you know who else needs that? Spider-Man needs that to happen, because Marvel's doing things right with their properties. Clearly, Sony is not.
But Spider-Man 2 made so much money.
But not as much.
Not as much.
Not
as
as
I
much.
thought. Not as like yes, it made money enough to where you can call it a success.
Yes.
But that's not the number Sony was hoping for. Sony was hoping for a lot more than that in worldwide, like $1 billion. That's what people were talking about Spider-Man 2 as it was going to be the most profitable movie of the summer, and it didn't even come close.
Could have been.
Could have been
if it had been
delivered.
good. If it was as good as the first Amazing Spider-Man, I think it would have made $1 billion.
And that's where I'm going with that. Is the fact that because the fans would rejoice because Marvel knows the property and would put together a new team, and I think you keep Garfield obviously, but I think that you
I don't know if they could do that.
They couldn't keep because of contracts. Maybe why wouldn't they take over his contract too?
It all depends on what happens. Right? Let's put it this way: if Sony's ship sinks, and that's ultimately the question we have here, is if the USS Sony sinks, then Marvel is in a position where they can step in and take over. Number one, they get the license to the character back. Mm-hmm. But what they could then do is buy the existing contracts that are attached, if they want to, that are attached to Spider-Man currently. So if Andrew Garfield's got another contract, or has got another film under contract, right, then Marvel could theoretically acquire the Sony's end of that contract and have Andrew Garfield in, if they want to. I happen to agree with Amy Rose. I think if they do get Spider-Man back, I think it's going to be the second.
Spider-Man?
I think it's going to be the second reboot.
Yeah.
I really do. Because I think Marvel will want to make their Spider-Man in their image that fits their universe.
I don't want to see another Spider-Man.
I don't think anybody does yet. All right, so we spent a lot of time on that. Let's go on. What's next in the Twitter's board?
Anna Salmaso writes, if you could pick one of your favorite movies to do a remake, which would it be, and who would you want to direct and star in it?
One of my favorite movies that I would love to see remade. I would love a modern telling of Bridge on the River Kwai. I would love a modern telling of that. I think that would be great.
Yeah, there you go.
I'd be down for that. I'd say take another crack at Lawrence of Arabia. The story is incredible. None of the current movie-going generations ever watched it, which is a total shame. It'll never live up to the original, but it doesn't need to live up to the original. That's fine. So that would be another one I wouldn't mind them seeing. See, I have these 4 rules for making original or doing a remake. 1, has it been more than 20 years? 2, has the majority of the current movie-going audience not seen it? 3, can it benefit from modern technology? And 4, does the story translate well and can it be told in a fresh way in a modern context? Right. If any movie meets those 4 criteria, then I'm all for it. I'm all for giving it a shot and seeing if it works or doesn't work. But those are the ones that I would do. Would you have one?
Yeah, I got 2, and they're both movies that have been rumored for remakes, but haven't happened yet. The first being a nice campy Flash Gordon, but I actually want to see it in a serious version. I want to see the way that it should be done, and I'd like to see Duncan Jones take a crack at it.
That'd be interesting.
Duncan Jones doing a Flash Gordon movie could be really cool. And then I'd actually like to see Time Bandits from the 80s. They talked about that for a bit, and I'd like to see John Favreau do that one, because I think he could add the humor
that would be
fantasy.
interesting.
So those are the 2 movies I'd like to see.
I like that. It's always hard for me to think off the top of my head about a movie I'd like to be remade, because if it was such a classic to me, you know my stance on it.
I'd
rather than not touch it. Usually, I'm not saying that there are not better remakes, but we had a conversation about Back to the Future before, and I think that there is a lot to do with the franchise not doing a remake, but doing a different time period, maybe starring a female instead this time. Me, yes, I'm on board asking that question.
Something has to be done about your kids.
You know, and getting another, like Christopher Walken in that role. So, I mean, there's so many good possibilities, because it wouldn't be a straight remake. It would be a continuation of the story. So something like that, I think, because think about how many different cool places they could go.
You'd like to see a restart as opposed to a reboot.
Exactly.
Someone gets a hold of the DeLorean or something, and they have to do something different with it.
This girl.
All right, what's next?
Movie Rat Mike writes, with October finally here, what is your go-to movie on Halloween?
I think we got this question the other day, as a matter of fact.
We both said the same thing.
Yeah, we both. Yeah, Nightmare Before Christmas. Did you got one?
Halloween, baby. The classic.
That's what.
The best.
How do you feel about Halloween, John?
The best.
I won't go into what I feel about Halloween again. All right, what's next?
Rich Silverwood writes, so Joaquin Phoenix is not Doctor Strange. Good. I think he's a better fit for DC anyway. I love to see him as Penguin. Thoughts?
What?
Well, once again, these questions of, hey, how would you like to see a superstar A-list actor in insert name of comic book character role here? Whatever. I mean, great actors are great actors. They're going to be great actors in whatever role you put them in. So sure, why not?
Joaquin Phoenix isn't going to a superhero franchise. This is 0 for 2 now. They had him. DC was talking to him about Lex Luthor. That fell through. Now he's talking about Doctor Strange. You're not getting this guy for a superhero franchise. What comes with it, with the contracts that they need for franchises? He doesn't want to do that. It's just not the kind of actor he is. He wants to show up in the Paul Thomas Anderson movies. He wants to show up in these other movies to where he's a different type of actor. A one-off, sure, maybe he would be able to pop into a movie like that, but that's not the deals that DC and Marvel make. It's not happening.
I'm seeing him more go the obscure and interesting. I'm excited for Inherent Vice, and I'd rather see Peter Dinklage as Penguin.
That'd be an interesting one.
That'd be interesting, yeah.
All right, what's next?
Douglas writes, what could Gone Girl get nominated for?
Okay, easily Best Lead Actress. That's a lock.
So good.
That's an absolute lock. In my opinion, Ben Affleck could get he won't win, but I believe Ben Affleck could get a nomination for Best Lead Actor.
I don't think so.
If it's so, that it'll be the 5th spot. But I mean, because this year's not going to be as stacked as last year's Best Lead Actor category.
For male category,
Yeah,
I disagree. We were just talking about
this. Well,
this.
you got Benedict Cumberbatch, you got Steve Carell,
Jake Gyllenhaal,
Jake Gyllenhaal,
Eddie Redmayne.
And then
They have everything.
And
Yeah,
Steve Carell for
I mentioned that, for Foxcatcher. Yeah.
So,
I loved Gone Girl, but I thought Ben Affleck was adequate, but not spectacular. I saw him in the role.
I thought he was solid.
Yeah.
I don't think solid enough for a nomination. I think Fincher's got a shot.
Yeah.
The movie picture has got a shot.
Adapted screenplay. It was really good.
Screenplay for sure.
Rosamund's a lock.
I think she's. But the question is with her too. Depending on how the studio wants to market, I could see her getting nominated for either lead or supporting because of the role.
She was the lead.
She's the lead.
I mean, I can just say I agree with you guys, but I wouldn't be surprised.
But after they pulled that stunt with the fighter and Christian Bale, Christian Bale's a supporting actor.
Right. Yeah.
I guess anything could happen.
Well, it
right.
worked.
It worked. It certainly did work. All right, what's next?
Joe Wakefield writes, do you think they're ever going to make a Harold and Kumar 4?
It's not as ridiculous of a question as you might think. I'm going to say I will go as high as 40%. I will say there's a 40% chance this could work. Now, a lot will depend on the next calendar year or so. We've got Dumb and Dumber 2 coming out. We still have these lingering rumors and words being dropped about a possible Bill and Ted. We've got like all this type of stuff. And let's face it, neither Harold nor Kumar are blowing it up right now.
Selfie rules.
Yeah. Oh, I watched the first 10 minutes of that. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot watch any more of this. This is horrible. So you mix all that together.
Yeah.
You make a Harold and Kumar film for $10 million, which you could, and you pull in 80. That's a big profit maker for a studio. I don't think it's so. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think it's unlikely to happen, but I'll go as high as 40%.
Yeah, it doesn't cost a lot. You're right. The two leads, kind of like how Alex Winter is like, I need Bill and Ted. Right. It's like they would probably go in the champion
Tom Arnold saying True Lies 2.
I mean, I don't care with that. But yeah, I really liked the first film, actually. I thought it was really funny and crazy, and ever since then, it's like, whatever, if you like that universe that they've created. But yeah, I don't think it's unlikely. They could make it for $5 million. They don't even need $10 million.
I know that Hurwitz and Schlossberg, who are the creators / writers, directors of the film, would want to do another one, for sure. I mean, they've said so. So the question is whether or not the studio will do it. And I think it all goes back to what you just said. If these movies and these buddies and these comedies start to do well and a Bill and Ted is announced, then it's very possible, for sure. And the last one, I thought was the best one. I mean, the first one was pretty good, but the Christmas one was just...
It was
I actually thought the last one was the best one, too. I didn't out of my mind love it, but I did think it was the best one.
3D, they used 3D so well in that movie. That is one of the best uses of 3D.
It'd actually be fun if they did a Halloween film, because I could see that playing off really well with that stoner universe that they've created, because they have good chemistry together.
All right, folks, so listen, before we go on with your Twitter questions, I'm going to let you know one of the films opening up in AMC theaters this week is, of course, the new Robert Duvall, Robert Downey Jr. film, The Judge. And we recently sent our very own Alicia Malone down to have a chat with Mr. Robert Downey Jr. about his new film. And we want to share a little bit of that conversation with you right now. Check it out.
Well, instead of just sitting back and relaxing like you could, you've set up a production company and producing this movie.
Yeah.
Why in particular did you want to take The Judge and put it on screen?
A, it's a departure from the kind of stuff I've been doing, but B, it's so entertaining. And so it's not really a courtroom drama or a family drama or a thing about first love or kind of a dysfunctional band of brothers. It's just a really, I think, well-executed piece of entertainment that's worth somebody going and paying to sit in a theater and watch. And that's kind of our credo, you know, is we're not trying to make important movies. We're not trying to, do our passion projects, because sometimes those don't really line up with what me, is just someone who, if I'm going to pay and go to see a movie, I want to get my money's worth. I don't want to, like, have you show me this movie that doesn't mean anything to me.
Well, I like it because it has that great central relationship. Obviously, you and Mr. Duvall. I just geeked out a little bit because I've been watching all the Coppola movies lately and love him. What is it like going head-to-head with someone like him? Because I know you've been this is your third film with him, but this is the first time that you've actually worked together?
And night and day. And I'm just looking at that poster with him kind of sitting in that authoritative position over me.
Awesome.
And it was really something else. And for someone who is not a spring chicken anymore, like Bobby, he is so vital, and he still has all the power, that he had even from, like, The Godfather, Great Santini. So it's just it really makes you think about what is it that keeps people so engaged and so capable. And I think that he's just a really interesting dude.
The Judge opens in AMC theaters everywhere this week. Head on over right now to www.amctheaters.com for your theater, showtime, and, of course, your movie ticket information. And if you want to see the rest of that interview that we had Alicia do with Robert Downey Jr., head on over to our YouTube channel, and you can see it in its entirety there. All right, let's get back to the Twitter questions. Ashley, what's next?
Ready. Jose Robles writes, with the success of Annabelle and Ted, could we see a return/reboot to Child's Play? I think seeing Chucky again would be fun.
Nah, I think everybody's lost interest in Chucky, to be honest. They just did they made one that they intended to go to theater, and nobody wanted to put it in theaters, and it went VOD, and it didn't even do all that great on VOD. I think we have a lot of fond memories of Chucky, but as much as people want to say they have fond memories, people aren't. The reality is there's not enough people that want to see it anymore.
I'm not interested at all.
Not interested.
And if it's rebooted, you still, for when it is rebooted, you're just like, how do you reboot Chucky if you're still going to have the same dolls? So people are like, it's just another version of how it all started again.
Make it a Ken doll and maybe a
Yeah, right, exactly.
Toy Story.
It's Woody.
Gone back.
Right. Woody goes on a killing spree.
All right, what's next?
Jonathan writes, we know Universal Monsters shared universe is coming. How do you feel about Dracula Untold now being the launch pad?
Well, okay, let's keep this in mind. The story started running around that, now it's official that Dracula is the launching pad of the... They made Dracula Untold, wrote it and directed it with it having no intention of actually being a part of the Universal monster universe that they're creating through Alex Kurtzman. But what happened was, after they got into making the film and they're already in the whole process of it, then they thought, maybe we can figure out a way to tie it into this monster universe. So the producer of Dracula went to Alex Kurtzman and say, what would we have to do in this movie to make it at least look like there's some tie? And then they wrote in some extra stuff afterwards to make it look like it ties in. So I'm going to go into Dracula Untold, which, by the way, you'll see it probably tomorrow or the next day. Our own Ashley Mova just flew to New York to talk to the cast of Dracula, and we'll have that. So she's seen the film. I have not yet. But I'm going to be going into Dracula just watching it as a Dracula movie. That's it. I'm not going into it looking at it for how does this unfold the larger, because it was such an afterthought to them that I still think it's a very strong possibility it won't tie in to what they're doing moving forward. But who knows? We'll see when we actually see the movie.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, too. Well, first off, I got to give respect to the Twitter guy. How he was able to get at Jonathan is awesome. But in regards to Dracula, I think it's risky, because if the movie doesn't seem like there's a lot of buzz on it, and if it doesn't do well, like real well, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, I think, because if you're going to tie it in a lot, if it's just a little bit and you don't really pick up on it, that next film really has to hit. Otherwise, who's going to care about this combined universe?
I love the idea of a shared monster universe. I think that's a really good move, especially, given the success of the superhero franchises. This is what they have. So that makes a lot of sense to me, but I don't want it to be an afterthought. I don't want you to be like, here's an Easter egg or a nod to this. I want you to actually have a plan how it's going to tie in. So I think it's probably smart not to do that if it wasn't, if it wasn't a foregone conclusion, if it really was after the fact. But I do think that would be smart, because even if one movie bombs and another one's fantastic, it can stand on its own, hinting to films beyond that one that wasn't as great. But I don't want it to feel like an afterthought. I want to have a clear concept ahead and for us to feel that excitement like we do with the MCU,
Yeah, I am looking forward to seeing what Alex Kurtzman does with a shared monster cinematic universe. I just don't know that I want Dracula to be...
But will you care if the first one, let's say that this is the first one and it does okay, or not even great, and then the next one comes out, and then that one doesn't really do that well? You still, how long before you just stop caring about a shared universe?
1 or 2 films.
Yeah.
1 or 2 films. You got to make sure you nail it.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Harry Juan Kenobi writes, if you could, right, great. If you could hang out for 24 hours with one movie character, who would it be and why?
Aw, damn, one movie character?
I got it. Big Lebowski, baby.
You may end up dead, though.
You would get in some trouble.
No, we'd go on adventures. It would be awesome.
Vegas, baby, Vegas. I'm going with Vince Vaughn and Swingers.
Oh my gosh, that's a really good one too. I was actually going to say the same thing, as in I'll go the Vegas route, but oddly enough, although it's not a big, great classic film, I would hang out with the 4 guys from Las Vegas. I would want to go to Vegas and hang out. If you see the movie, I want to go to Vegas and hang out with those dudes. That's what I want to do.
I'd go Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and party with those guys.
You always want to pick things you could end up in a ditch somewhere.
You know what? If I'm in for the ride, I want the adventure, John.
All right. What's next?
Gibby Royale writes, what happened to the Peanuts Charlie Brown movie?
Well, I mean, an announcement trailer came out. Remember, you thought it was a globe, and then it zoomed in. It zoomed out. It was actually Charlie Brown's head. I believe it wasn't supposed to be till 2016 or 2017 anyway. It's not like it was supposed to be imminent.
Wow.
I've heard nothing about it not being on anymore. As far as I know, it's still happening. But
I think a trailer was even released too.
Well, there was an announcement trailer about the head and everything when it was a Charlie Brown movie. But I don't think anything else.
Photos were released because I remember people saying, "Oh, look, it's not as terrifying CGI as we thought it would be."
Shortly after the announcement trailer. That's right. There were some photos. So
but nothing since then.
But I mean, it's still so far away. As far as I know, it's still so far away that I'm not surprised we haven't heard anything more yet. So as far as I know, it's still on. All right, what's next?
Anna writes, love AMC Movie Talk. I watch it every day. Why do some TV networks play only movies that did poorly at the box office?
Because they're cheap for them to get. I mean, these TV networks, they got to buy rights. They have to pay to put these movies on. And TV stations need programming, especially now with 500,000 channels. They need programming. Why do you think we've been asked to put this show on television the number of times we have been? Because they're desperate. They're desperate for programming, whatever they can get. And if you can go and get an underperforming movie and only pay X amount of dollars for it to fill up, 2 hours of your airtime.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think it's the same thing. You want to stumble upon something on cable. That's when usually you stop, and that's why a lot of these movies will have life. Some movies that bombed in the theater will have their life on cable. I remember watching movies as a kid that did terrible in theater, and I remembered them because I caught them on cable because they made a good deal.
Yeah.
It's even the same with the paid networks, with the HBO and Showtimes. You're not going to see one movie here playing here as well because they have big contracts of what they buy. So it's the same thing. They just get the better movies.
Yeah. All right, what's next?
The Catman Cat writes, how much impact do you think critic reviews have on the viewers' reviews?
On the viewers' reviews, none. I don't think critic reviews have any impact on viewers' reviews, except for some. I think critic reviews will have more impact on other critics than it does on fans. Fans are going to say what they want. Now, how much impact I thought you were going to ask how much impact do critic reviews have on box office? I've been told by a couple of different studio people that for box office, it's usually a 10% swing. That if they're putting out a movie, and critic ratings right down the middle, it's going to make, let's say you're putting out a movie that's going to make $100 million. What a studio rep told me was that if they can get great positive critic reviews, just critic reviews before the movie opens, that can swing at 10% to the positive, and that can change that estimate now to $110 million. And believe me, doesn't matter how big the studio is, they care about that $10 million. However, they said if the movie gets really, really crappy, horrible 0% reviews, that can swing at 10% to the negative. So that movie that would have made $100 million now is just going to make 90. So there's a $20 million difference there, which is huge. Now, after the movie comes out, and then you add the word of mouth from audiences and fans, then that can become a bigger deal, like we saw with Guardians of the Galaxy. There's no way that Guardians of the Galaxy would make $670 million worldwide. No way. Except the critics like it, and then the films loved it, and it snowballed and has a huge effect. But as far as on viewer reviews, I don't think any at all. Can you guys think of it any differently?
Yeah, I agree. I like how Rotten Tomatoes has it broken down into critics and user reviews because critics are generally a lot more, critical by default, so it makes sense, and they're usually like a whole percentage lower than the user review, if not more. So I don't think it's much. I mean, if you hear a movie is, look what Edge of Tomorrow, the positive reviews couldn't even save that movie at the box office. So it has a little bit of, help in terms of numbers and effects, but I think, Transformers 4 and Spider-Man 2 are the really good examples, because critics slammed both of those movies, but all the fans still really like them. Right. So everyone's going to hold strong to what they believe in.
And fans will have a certain, especially for summer movies as well, they know what they want to see. So they're going to check in to see what critics thought as well too, but for the most part, they're going to look and go, I want to see that movie. The reviews aren't so good for Transformers. I don't care. I'm going to see it anyway. That's what I want to see. I think sometimes if there's a movie that they maybe didn't hear of, or if there's a certain movie that they were just on the fence about, that's when they really check in to both critics and fan reaction, because okay, well, that's going down that direction. I hadn't heard anything about, like Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I think is a good example, because Rise, a lot of people weren't really too excited about it when they announced the reboot, and then it blew up because the initial people who saw it that first weekend, then the critics, then the fans all were raving about it, and then it continued business.
All right, what's next?
God, I love that.
Taylor Edwards writes, hey guys, love the show. What was the last movie you rented from Blockbuster?
Do they still exist?
The last one. Before it went out, before it went under.
I couldn't tell you that.
I remember.
Do you?
I remember
Wow.
mine. It's my all-time favorite comedy. Noise is Off. It was the last video that I rented at a Blockbuster, and it was actually in L.A. It was that recently. It was only 6.5 years ago. I was living in my first apartment in L.A., which was right in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard, and there was a Blockbuster, one of the last gasping ones, right on the corner of. Don't want to say Vine. What's the street that that you go down to get to the Grove from Sunset?
Fairfax?
Fairfax, thank you. It was right by Sunset and Fairfax, and I went in there, and the very last movie I ever rented from that place was, I hadn't seen Noises Off in a while, and I got Noises Off.
I actually just got a flashback of my movie, and I didn't think I would. It was Zombieland, and it was on the Blockbuster on Robertson many years ago before it closed as well. And I actually was going through some of my old cards, and I had a Blockbuster certificate, and I was like, what is this?
I don't remember at all. I used to at some point, I remember I was buying a lot of them because I had those bins that I would just go and buy DVDs there, but I can't remember the last one.
Okay, I'm sorry to use up one of our last few minutes here on the show on this, but I got to tell this story about Blockbuster. So a couple years ago, I'm doing some interviews for, what was the name of the Zach Galifianakis, Will Ferrell? This is the campaign? Is that the name of it? So they're doing interviews for the campaign, and I'm standing there waiting for them to come down to me, and they come over, so Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis come up, and I'm like, hey guys, John, I hadn't met Zach before, and it's John from AMC. He goes, oh, AMC. And then Will Ferrell cuts in.
I remember this.
You remember this?
Good story.
Will Ferrell cuts in and says, oh, man, I'm so sorry to hear about you guys. And Zach Galifianakis turns and goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, AMC's going out of business. And I just decided, whatever reason, to play along. And I go, yeah, I just got told that today's my last day, actually. And Zach Galifianakis is like, oh, no, that's awful. That's terrible. He said, are you married? And I said, yeah. And while I don't have kids, I said, and I've got some kids too. So Zach Galifianakis pulls out his wallet and hands me a couple of bucks. He goes, here, man. I'm like, oh, well, thanks. That was really nice of you. He goes, do you have another job lined up yet? I'm like, no, not yet. I'll work on it. So he pulls his wallet out again and gives me another 20 or 30. At which point, Will Ferrell, he swears and says, that's weak. Get out of my way. And Will Ferrell pulls out a $100 bill and hands me a $100 bill. And then they both start digging through their wallets to see if they got anything else to give me, because I'm about to lose my job. And in the process, Will Ferrell, as he's digging through his wallet, goes, oh, look, he pulls out a Blockbuster card. And Galifianakis goes, you have a Blockbuster card in your wallet? He goes, what are you talking about, man? I just bought 10,000 shares in Blockbuster. I think it was a pretty sound investment. And they just went back and forth on that for a while. So
is that on? Can you find that too?
Yeah, we've got that. It's on our YouTube channel here somewhere. So good. Then Anne took a still of that interview.
I remember.
Anne took a still picture of that interview, and she took one of the dollar bills that Zach Galifianakis gave me, and she framed the picture in a frame with the dollar bill.
You didn't give the money back, John?
I did. Actually, no. I turned to Zach Galifianakis and I said, "Here, man, do you want your money back?" He goes, "No, man, just keep it." It was only 36 of his dollars I had. But Will Ferrell goes, "F that," and reaches and pulls his $100 bill back. He goes, "That's $100." He takes his $100 bill back.
Awesome.
There's a skit right there.
It was so great. Anyway, all right, one more question for the day.
Last one. John Rodriguez writes, what are some sequels that you would love to see get done? I agree with John. I would love to see a Mystery Men sequel.
Well, you just answered the question. I mean, we were asked this. Let's take one more, because we were asked that exact same question a couple days ago.
Okay. Jasmine K writes, question, could we ever see the Phantom movie remake? Thanks, and bring on the filthy.
Yeah. I really do. I've heard nothing. I've heard absolutely nothing, but I totally believe at some point we're going to see the Phantom redone. I think that's a property that's sitting out there that's not under the thumb of Marvel or DC right now. And I think it's ripe. I think somebody could do it.
Yeah, I think it's possible, too. It's just a matter of... It's a risk, though, to do superhero movies that's not under the DC and Marvel banner. Because Kick-Ass, for what it was, even though people loved the first one, didn't do very well. The first one did okay. Yeah. So not having those two banners is tough, so it's a risk.
Yeah.
It's a risk, but I think it's a good enough property that someone might want to take that risk. Maybe the monster universe.
Yeah. Just bring back Billy Zane. All right, folks, that'll do it for us for this installment of AMC Movie Talk. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks so much all you guys for tweeting in your questions. But listen, normally we have mailbag, so if you want to get a topic or a question addressed on this show or on our weekend AMC mailbag show, just email in your questions anytime to not at AMC Movie News, that's different, that's the Twitter, to amcmovietalk@gmail.com. Just send in your questions there, and maybe you'll see one of your questions on one of our shows. Don't forget, lots of great films playing in AMC theaters right now, and a bunch of good ones opening up. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com for your theater, showtime, and of course your movie ticket information. If you want an audio-only version of this show, look in the description of this video and you'll find a link to our podcast feed. And don't forget to give us a big thumbs up. Click the thumbs up button and make sure you subscribe to our AMC YouTube channel. I want to thank the people sitting at the table with me. First of all, Mr. Christian Harloff. Christian, where can people find you online?
Pretty easy. If you go to either Instagram or Twitter, Christian Harloff, and in preparation for Jedi Council, by the way, if you guys want, tell me what spin-off film that you really want to see most. I'm very curious to hear.
Of course, our senior editor of movie news around here, Miss Amy Rose Eisenbach. Amy Rose, where can people find you?
At Amy Rosie on Twitter and Instagram. And don't forget to AMCI Indie Spotlight airs tomorrow, and come hang out with us and talk about some good indies.
And, of course, our lovely host today, Miss Ashley Mova. Ashley, welcome back from New York. Where can people find you online?
Thank you, sir. Twitter, Instagram, at Ashley Mova. Happy Tuesday, guys.
And, of course, you can find me on the various social media networks, just at John Campea. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. My name is John Campea for AMC Movie News, and until next time, bye-bye.
Hey everyone, if you liked this video, click that thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. It's free and helps you stay up to date with all the latest movie news, as well as our daily AMC Movie Talk show. Also, make sure that you follow us on Facebook and Twitter to stay up to date with all of our special promotions, contests, and prize giveaways.